You've been listening to Matters of the Mind, a podcast that focuses on matters that affect the mind. I'm Dr. Rick Adams, licensed psychotherapist and professor of psychology and human behavior. Come, join me on the couch as we discuss matters dealt with, matters dealing with, and the matters that we avoid. Welcome to Matters of the Mind. I'm Dr. Rick Adams, licensed psychotherapist and professor of psychology and human behavior. This podcast is devoted to helping you understand how the mind is influenced physically, psychologically, emotionally, socially, and spiritually through a framework that I often call PPES systemology. For more than 3 decades, I've had the privilege of having a front row seat into the minds of humanity. My purpose through this podcast is simple: to help, aid, and assist you to understand how the mind works and how to guard your heart and protect your future. Recently, I had the opportunity to speak at a 5-day youth leadership retreat with approximately 150 teenagers, alongside about 25 adult leaders. It was an incredible event. However, at the conclusion of the leadership retreat, one of the adult leaders approached me, and she said something that stayed with me. She said, "Dr. Rick, you haven't just been speaking to the youth, you've also been speaking to the adults as well." After hearing that statement and taking a mental pulse of everything that's going on and happening in the world today that's impacting the mind, I decided to share a portion of that message with you on Matters of the Mind. During that retreat, I spoke with the youth about the importance of not getting caught up mentally in what I call the NETT. The NETT stands for negative emotions and toxic thoughts. And there's a lot of negative emotions and toxic thoughts that are going on in the world today. So I want to share with you what the actual NETT stands for. The N in NETT stands for negativity. Negativity often begins with words. Those words lead to negative comments, negative behaviors, and eventually negative attitudes. Those words are words like, you can't, you won't, you'll never be successful. Oftentimes, when we hear those words, we have to be able to challenge those words, because our failure to challenge those words puts a cap on our life. It limits our capability, it impacts our ability, and eventually it hinders our potential. Words carry a lot of power, especially when it comes to the mind. Over time, words can begin to shape your sight and the way you see things, which begins to influence how you even see yourself. Eventually, these words that we speak begin to impact our perception, and our perception eventually becomes our reality. Negativity, if it goes unchecked, can become one of the sources of getting caught in the net. How does the mind work when it comes to negativity? I believe that what I call the raid happens. When it comes to negativity, negativity is connected to rejection, abandonment, isolation, and discouragement. Many people have had these experiences with one or more of all of these. And when these experiences, again, go unchecked, negativity begins to take root in the mind. The next letter in the NETT is emotions. I talk to them a lot about their emotions and how emotions can impact the body, the mind, as well as your spirit. But when it comes to emotions, what are emotions? I will define it in these terms. Emotions are the body's internal responses to an experience. Now, that experience can be real or false or perceived experience. Those experiences can manifest in 3 ways. They begin to impact us physically in the body. Our heart rate increases, we get a lot of tension, but they also can impact us psychologically when it comes to our emotions. They impact us psychologically as it relates to our thoughts, as well as how we interpret things that are going on around us. Emotions also can impact us spiritually through our belief, our faith, as well as how we deal with fear. Emotional responses are common because we call most of our emotional responses feelings. Feelings can't be stopped. However, we have to be able to govern, direct, and manage those feelings. Those feelings, if they get out of control, will begin to, again, put a cap on us. Therefore, we must become what I presented to them as the CEO of your feelings. You must control them, embrace them, and overcome them. But the first one is control them. You must control your feelings. How? You have to challenge them.
Challenge them to see if they truly reflect truth. You also have to embrace your feelings. To embrace them means to acknowledge them, but you also have to contain them and control them as it relates to how you think about them. And the third one is you have to overcome those feelings. To overcome those feelings, you must begin to contradict them and find out if they conflict with truth. Not only truth, but do they conflict with God's wisdom and God's purpose for your life? When you get caught up in the net, the mind becomes entangled in negativity and unmatched emotions. The process I describe as an acronym I call the section. The S is snared. Negativity quietly hooks you before you realize it. The E is entrapment. What happens is you slowly become entrapped in your feelings and it becomes difficult to escape. And C, it eventually captures you. You become captured in your thinking and you're no longer free. You react instead of choose. And T is tangled. You get tangled in your thoughts, tangled in your emotions, and eventually you become knotted together. And the I is what happens is now you become immobilized. Immobilized by fear, doubt, and the inability to move forward. And eventually, overwhelmed. Overwhelmed by your emotions, flooded, and you become shut down, and eventually it impacts your judgment as well as your clarity. And N is for neutralized. Your confidence, influence, and leadership ability lose effectiveness. The third component of the net is toxicity, and in many ways, the most dangerous. Why? Because toxicity is the most poisonous, venomous, and destructive of all the components. Toxicity refers to anything that has the capacity to harm, corrupt, or destroy. When toxicity is introduced and allowed to remain, it can infect the body, corrupt the heart, and distort the mind. Scripturally, as well as psychologically, this impacts the soul, which is your mind, your will, and your emotions. Mentally, toxicity imposes harmful thought patterns that can not only impact the person's life, but impact a person's life for a lifetime. Toxicity is often fueled by three major ingredients: regret, remorse, and resentment. When it comes to toxicity or toxic people, know that if you have a person who's dealing with a lot of regret, a lot of remorse, and a lot of resentment, chances are they're going to become toxic. These emotional toxins quietly contaminate the mind. Toxicity becomes activated when three things happen: when you give in, give up, and give out. When you give up and stop trying. When you give out and you become so exhausted that you no longer want to persist. And when you give in and succumb to the pressures. The final letter in the NETT stands for thoughts. You must learn not to become entangled in toxic thought patterns. Researchers suggest that the average person experiences thousands of thoughts every day, many of which are repetitive, and a significant portion, as much as 80% of them, are negative. That means that it's very easy for the mind to become wrapped in toxic thinking, which is why the choice is yours. You must decide whether or not you're willing to allow the mind to become entangled in the net. And if there's one principle that I want to share with you and I want you to remember, it's this: that you must learn to guard your heart and protect your mind. Because the influences, when you don't do it, will shape your mind, shape your thinking, and ultimately shape your future. This has been Dr. Rick with Matters of the Mind, helping you to understand that you must guard your heart and protect your mind in order to protect your future. Thank you.
You've been listening to Matters of the Mind, a podcast that focuses on matters that affect the mind. I'm Dr. Rick Adams, licensed psychotherapist and professor of psychology and human behavior. Come, join me on the couch as we discuss matters dealt with, matters dealing with, and the matters that we avoid.